August 29, 2024. The Bai building on Fuxing Road in Beijing was suffocating under a deadly, chilling silence. The motorcade of United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan slowly rolled into the compound. This core messenger of White House power, having just wrapped up 2 days of intense strategic talks with Wang, made a request that deeply rattled the leaders inside Zhongnanhai. He demanded to see Zhang Youxia. For Xi Jinping, who was already at the center of a swirling vortex of political rumors following the third plenum, this was not just a diplomatic overstep. It was a blatant, public slap in the face to his absolute authority. Jake Sullivan's move sent an unprecedentedly clear signal. In the eyes of Washington, when it comes to the razor's edge of war and peace, Zhang Youxia is the only man in China who truly controls the barrel of the gun. For Xi Jinping, this was no longer about saving face. It was about his survival. And it was in this exact moment of profound insecurity that Xi Jinping's murderous paranoia toward his closest ally was completely ignited. For years, Western media has been obsessed with the heartwarming narrative of a lifelong family friendship between Xi Jinping and Zhang Youxia. But they missed the most ruthless truth of the Chinese Communist Party's power arena. A gap in social class and personality is the perfect breeding ground for betrayal. Let's rewind. June 1953. Xi Jinping was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, the son of the Minister of Propaganda. That same year, Zhang Youxia was born. His father, Zhang Zongxuan, was also a top-ranking general, but fundamentally he was just a blunt warrior. In the Chinese Communist Party of that era, everything was about your pedigree of red aristocracy and which faction you belonged to. Civil bureaucrats and military generals lived in two entirely different ecosystems. Xi Jinping's father played the game of propaganda and united front work. He was a master of political dark arts walking the glamorous halls of the central government. Zhang Youxia's father, on the other hand, was a fierce combatant under Peng Dehuai, but Mao Zedong famously called him stupid. In party terms, that meant the Zhang family lacked the DNA for political opportunism. They could only eat by bleeding on the battlefield. These paternal differences shaped two parallel lives that were never meant to intersect. In the highly stratified 1950s, Xi Jinping grew up behind the red walls of the elite Bai school in Beijing, enjoying the special privileges of a vice premier's son, a greenhouse designed to cultivate future rulers. 20 kilometers away, Zhang Youxia attended the rougher Jingshan school. That physical distance was the true gap between their political castes. Then came the Cultural Revolution, stretching this gap into a matter of life and death. Xi Jinping's suffering was largely just a temporary loss of political status. Yes, the propaganda says he was carrying bags of wheat as a peasant in Liangjiahe. But behind the scenes, his mother, Qi Xian, was furiously pulling strings with his father's old loyalists to protect him. Every step Xi Jinping took, going to university, joining the party, getting promoted, was carefully patched up and escorted by the old guard. Xi Jinping's political life has always been a greenhouse succession. Zhang Youxia's fate was a literal jungle survival. His father was politically clumsy, picked the wrong side, and left Zhang Youxia with zero safety nets. In 1968, while Xi Jinping was reading Victor Hugo in a cave and having his mother beg provincial secretaries for favors, Zhang Youxia was thrown into the most remote, brutal unit on the Yunnan border. No privileges, just sweltering jungles and the constant threat of death. In the 1984 Battle of Laoshan against Vietnam, Zhang Youxia conquered 33 fortified hills in 2 days. He survived mountains of corpses and seas of blood. He made a name for himself through sheer violence, shocking even the top brass of the Viet Cong. These combat medals gave Zhang Youxia the capital to look down on all the political hacks in the military. It also planted the ultimate ticking time bomb in his relationship with Xi Jinping. A true commander who fought his way out of hell fundamentally despises a bureaucrat who climbed the ranks by writing memos and kissing up. This psychological imbalance guaranteed they could only ever use each other. They could never be true brothers in arms. So, why did they team up? In 2007, this massive gap was temporarily papered over by mutual greed. That year, Xi Jinping, a man with zero military backing, was crowned the heir apparent. Facing the entrenched Jiang Zemin military syndicate, led by Guo Buxiong and Su Kaiho, Xi Jinping desperately needed a sharp blade to hack his way through. Zhang Youxia, a sidelined, bloodthirsty red princeling desperate to return to the center of power, was the perfect weapon. Why did Xi Jinping specifically pick Zhang Youxia? It reveals the unspoken, subtle rules of the red princelings. In a circle obsessed with bloodlines, your father's historical rank dictates your psychological dominance. There were other powerful princelings in the army, like Lu Yuan. But Lu Yuan's father was a former president of China, far outranking Xi Jinping's father. For a deeply paranoid man obsessed with absolute authority like Xi Jinping, allying with someone whose father outranked his own was terrifying. He would constantly worry about being overthrown by the bigger brother. But Zhang Youxia was safe. Zhang Youxia's father was historically equal to, or even lower than, Xi Jinping's father. This gave Xi Jinping the psychological safety he craved. He believed Zhang Youxia would forever be a loyal vassal, never a rival. Their alliance was purely transactional. Xi Jinping borrowed Zhang Youxia's military soul and his godlike prestige among the ground forces to take nominal control of the army. In return, Zhang Youxia used Xi Jinping's imperial power to smash his father's political ceiling. Taking advantage of Premier Li Keqiang's urban redevelopment policies, Zhang Youxia created the so-called Northeast Model, a perfect loop of military land grabs and internal buybacks that built a staggering, independent slush fund for himself and the Shenyang military region. Faced with this blatant corruption, Xi Jinping chose strategic blindness. He tacitly allowed Zhang Youxia to reap these massive profits as a political dividend for purging Xi Jinping's enemies. What followed was the post-18th Party Congress military reform. On the surface, Xi Jinping was reshaping the military. In reality, he was using Zhang Youxia to execute a massive purge of the old guard. But in the logic of a dictator, there is no such thing as retiring in glory. There is only the ancient proverb, "How can I let another man snore beside my bed?" Once the old enemies were wiped out, Xi Jinping woke up to a terrifying reality. The battle-hardened faction led by Zhang Youxia and Lu Zhenli had become the new obstacle to his absolute dictatorship. These men commanded absolute loyalty. Their authority came from blood and bullets, not from Xi Jinping's grace. For an insecure leader craving Mao Zedong-like godhood, an independent general with genuine prestige is the ultimate original sin. So, Xi Jinping began a dark, venomous long game. He started grooming a faction led by Miao Hua, the Fujian 31st Army clique. These were political commissars Xi Jinping knew from his days in Fujian. They had zero combat experience. Their only skill was writing loyalty pledges and kissing the ring. Xi Jinping planted Miao Hua in the Central Military Commission as his personal overseer. Miao Hua weaponized his control over military personnel to infiltrate Zhang Youxia's turf, specifically targeting the lucrative General Armaments Department to slowly bleed Zhang Youxia's power dry. The tension exploded right before the 20th Party Congress. It was no longer factional friction. It was a zero-sum game for survival. To completely destroy Zhang Youxia, Miao Hua's camp detonated the world-shocking rocket force corruption scandal. According to highly credible political deductions, it was Miao Hua's camp that intentionally leaked top-secret rocket force data to the United States. But because that explosive United States report gave Xi Jinping the perfect, undeniable excuse to draw his sword and launch a 7-year retrospective investigation. The target was razor-sharp. They aimed directly at the massive ledgers from the exact years Zhang Youxia ran the equipment department. This wasn't just an anti-corruption drive. In Chinese political slang, this was digging up his ancestral graves. The goal was moral annihilation, to prove to the entire army that their worshipped combat heroes, were actually mega-corrupt thieves hoarding military procurement funds. Miao Hua wanted to strip Zhang Youxia of his legitimacy, clearing the final hurdle for the loyalist, political hacks to take total control of the guns. But Miao Hua and his enforcer, He Weidong, made a fatal miscalculation. They underestimated Zhang Youxia's remaining value to Xi Jinping, and they underestimated the old general's political cunning. At the most critical moment of the probe, an imperial decree dropped from the very top. Xi Jinping ordered the investigation timeline to be strictly limited to after 2017. This meant the years prior to 2017, when Zhang Youxia had total control over procurement, were completely off-limits. This wasn't Xi Jinping showing mercy. It was Xi Jinping realizing he still desperately needed Zhang Youxia as the stabilizing anchor to prevent the military from spiraling into total mutiny. Surviving this near miss, Zhang Youxia showed terrifying political patience. At the meeting announcing the rocket force purge, he literally stepped aside, letting Xi Jinping's lackey He Weidong take center stage. He played dead. But that retreat was just the silence before the storm. The real turning point? August 2024. Jake Sullivan's visit. When Jake Sullivan specifically requested to see Zhang Youxia, he shattered the delicate balance in Beijing. Zhang Youxia seized this golden opportunity to flex his muscles to the world, and to Xi Jinping. Inside the Bai building, Zhang Youxia sent a crystal-clear message. On matters of war and peace, I, Zhang Youxia, am the one Washington wants and needs to talk to. He was essentially telling Xi Jinping, the Americans only respect me. I am the only one keeping the United States and Chinese militaries from accidental war. This foreign certification cornered Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping realized that if he touched Zhang Youxia now, U.S.-China relations and the Taiwan Strait could spiral out of control. Forced into submission by Zhang Youxia using foreign leverage, Xi Jinping had to back off. Even worse for Xi Jinping, he had to silently watch as Zhang Youxia turned the tables. Having caught his breath, Zhang Youxia unleashed a surgical decapitation strike. He aimed directly at Miao Hua, the brain of the operation, and He Weidong, the enforcer. This led to what insiders call the massacre of the 9 Xi faction generals, just before the 4th plenum. The Fujian and Donghai faction generals, handpicked by Xi Jinping's men to take over the military, were wiped out and purged in a matter of days. It wasn't just physical elimination of his rivals. It was Zhang Youxia broadcasting to the entire million-strong army. Inside the Bai building, I am still the boss. While the military stabilized on the surface, this balance of terror, dictated by Zhang Youxia, was a nightmare for Xi Jinping, who is desperately trying to secure an unprecedented 4th term in 2027. Xi Jinping cannot tolerate a warlord who overshadows the emperor, especially one who uses American influence to keep himself alive. To break this deadlock, Xi Jinping completely shifted his grand strategy. If Zhang Youxia's shield was being the anchor of U.S.-China relations, Xi Jinping decided to destroy the shield. Xi Jinping actively sought to de-escalate tensions with Washington. He even prepared to offer massive concessions to Donald Trump, like promising to buy overflowing amounts of American soybeans and agricultural products. The logic was simple: buy off the Americans, lower the risk of war, and Zhang Youxia's value as an insurance policy against war plummets to zero. With the external pressure neutralized, Xi Jinping turned his guns inward once again. He launched a new, ultra-secretive purge. This time, the entry point was Ma Xingrui, the party secretary of Xinjiang. Ma Xingrui wasn't just a technocrat, he was deeply embedded in the aerospace and defense industry network, heavily crossing paths with Zhang Youxia's old empire. By taking down Ma Xingrui, Xi Jinping was prying open the back door to Zhang Youxia's hidden financial web, resuming the grave-digging operation he was forced to abort in 2023. Xi Jinping had finally made up his mind. To survive 2027, Zhang Youxia had to die. January 24, 2026. China's Ministry of National Defense drops the bomb. Zhang Youxia and Chief of Joint Staff Liu Zhenli are placed under investigation for severe violations of discipline and law. But according to reliable leaks, both men were actually secretly snatched 5 days earlier, on January 19th. Those 5 days were the most excruciatingly terrifying moments of Xi Jinping's life. He rushed the public announcement, bypassing standard Politburo procedures, purely out of bone-deep fear. He was terrified of a counter-coup. He was gambling that the ground forces would fall into chaos the moment they lost their alpha wolf, gambling that he could blitzkrieg the 5 theater commands into submission before they could react. On the surface, his gamble seemed to pay off. But look closer at the cracks. In the initial military memo, Xi Jinping tried to slap Zhang Youxia with the ultimate political death sentence, sabotaging the Central Military Commission Chairman responsibility system. In Chinese Communist Party jargon, that means treason, mutiny. But just days later, that explosive charge mysteriously vanished, downgraded to the generic, pale charge of economic corruption. Why the bizarre downgrade? Because accusing your top general of sabotaging the chairman is announcing to the whole world that Xi Jinping's authority was successfully challenged. It exposes the ugly truth that the supreme commander cannot control his own generals. For a man obsessed with the illusion that the whole army loves him, admitting to a near mutiny is suicidal. So he used corruption as a blanket to cover up a brutal, life-or-death power struggle. But the panic could not be hidden. The most ironic proof was found in the official military newspaper. After Zhang Youxia's fall, the headline shifted from the usual, "The entire army resolutely supports," to "The entire army must firmly support the central decision." That word, must, screams desperation. Behind that demand lies the suffocating, deafening silence of the 5 major theater commands. This silence is an obedience. It's a highly dangerous wait-and-see game. It's a passive mutiny. In China, there is a cultural law of warfare that goes back thousands of years. An army's loyalty is never built on a piece of paper signed by a politician. It is built on the real prestige of a commander who bled with his men. Armies follow generals, not emperors. And in taking down Zhang Youxia, Xi Jinping committed a massive, unforgivable taboo. He did not use the military's internal discipline commission. He did not use another general. He used Wang Xiaohong, the Minister of Public Security, his personal lapdog. In Chinese political slang, Xi Jinping used the handle of the knife, the police, to arrest the barrel of the gun, the military. In any violent apparatus that values honor and hierarchy, having civilian cops arrest a 4-star war hero is the ultimate humiliation. When Wang Xiaohong slapped the cuffs on Zhang Youxia, Xi Jinping thought he was showing an iron fist. He did not realize he wasn't just slapping Zhang Youxia's face, he was slapping the faces of millions of active-duty soldiers. This absurd, using police to rule the army, shattered the last shred of dignity the military had. The immediate result? A total collapse of military morale and loyalty. Even more terrifying, Xi Jinping made this move without lining up a successor. This exposes that this was not a calculated purge from a position of strength. It was a panicked arrest driven by fear. Historically, even the deeply paranoid Emperor Chongzhen of the Ming dynasty, when he wanted to execute his top general Yuan Chonghuan, knew he had to immediately appoint another heavy hitter like Wu Sangui to hold the front lines. Even a failed emperor knew, an army cannot go a single day without a commander. Look at Mao Zedong. When he purged his top commanders, he always had another war hero ready in the wings. Purge Peng Dehuai, bring in Lin Biao. When Lin Biao dies, bring in Yi Jianyi. You can only purge a warlord if you have another warlord to keep the troops in line. But Xi Jinping? He took out Zhang Youxia and left a massive vacuum of power. It's a reckless, hit-and-run tactic, killing the man but refusing to bury the body. It proves he does not actually have total control. He is just playing a political game of Russian roulette. As Zhang Youxia is quietly erased from the sequence of power, The pyramid Xi Jinping built after the 20th Party Congress looks solid on the outside, but is completely hollowed out on the inside. Taking down Zhang Youxia marks Xi Jinping's absolute, final break with the red aristocracy, military elites, the last faction that actually held real structural power. Xi Jinping still stands at the very peak of absolute power, but he has just realized the red foundation beneath his feet is gone, replaced by quicksand that could swallow him at any moment. The curtain has fallen on his darkest hour. And the most terrifying thing he faces now isn't loud opposition. It's silence. Because in the dark, the people staying silent are the ones holding the guns. That concludes today's deep dive. Thank you for watching. What do you think about Xi Jinping's massive gamble? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Share this video so more people can see the truth behind the red walls. See you next time.